Hello everyone, we are here today talking about New World after its closed beta and getting ready for launch. Specifically talking about the combat and the weapons in the game to give you an idea of how it operates and what the different weapons excel at so you can make an informed decision come launch day on what you want to use if you did not get the opportunity to jump into the closed beta. Obviously throughout the closed beta, there were definitely weapons that stood out above the others or were considered overpowered. We're not going to delve into any of the specific traits that dealt with this, but be prepared that some of this info may get changed before launch depending on what the developers decide to do. We also will not be talking about which weapons are best or ranking them in any way, but rather just taking a basic overlook at their trees and what they are going to try and accomplish in-game. The weapons in New World are broken up into 4 categories, being one-handed weapons, two-handed weapons, ranged weapons, and magical weapons. The one-handed weapons are just that. You only have one weapon in your hand, even though dual-wielding the hatchets would be pretty cool. The sword and shield weapon is the only one in the game that has an offhand, being the shield, obviously, and is the only weapon currently in the game that benefits from having a shield equipped. Once you select a weapon in the game, on the left side you can see your overall level with it. Every weapon in the game can level up to a total of 20 levels, which will give you 19 points to spend in it. The final passive in each tree will require you to have 10 points spent in the tree before it, meaning you will need 11 points total to acquire that passive, leaving you only 8 other points to put in the other tree or to fill out the tree you're currently in. This means that you cannot unlock everything in any given weapon and you will have to make some choices. You will see your abilities are bound to Q, R, and F, and at the bottom of that section it'll tell you what stats the damage of the weapon scales with. For the sword and shield, it is strength and dexterity. On the right section of the window, you will see 2 different trees for each weapon, specializing in different areas of combat. Towards the bottom of the screen, you will see your confirm button, or if you don't have any points to spend, it will say no points spent, and just below that, you will see a respec button. New World has free respecs on the weapons and your attributes at least up until level 20. It's hard to tell on the closed beta if they're allowing you to respec it more often than that, or if this will be exactly how it is in launch. If you are able to free respec under level 20 come launch day, make sure you take full advantage of it and test out different combinations, since passives can be incredibly important in this game, and unlocking the higher level passives on each individual skill can sometimes be better than unlocking new skills themselves. The damage side of the sword in the Swordmaster tree will get Whirling Blade as its first ability, which will deal damage to all foes within 2 meters and deal 145% of your weapon damage. It's on a cooldown of 15 seconds, and it's important to note with this ability that it is a somewhat charge, or at least a leap forward. Not as far as some of the other charges in the game, but it is worth noting that it does gain some ground. The second ability is Reverse Stab, a somewhat difficult to aim ability given its short range, but it trades off with a very high damage output with 175% weapon damage. The third ability in the Swordmaster tree is Leaping Strike, a short range charge that deals a decent amount of damage. The elite passive in the Swordmaster tree is Leadership. While you are holding a sword, all your group members gain a 10% damage increase. And the Swordmaster tree excels at finishing targets off and catching targets that are trying to move from you to another group member, whether it be in PvE or PvP. You can see this very evidently in the Leaping Strike, gaining a passive to increase its damage to enemies that are below 30% health, and slowing enemies when you hit them in the back and they're trying to move away from you. This synergizes really well with different things in the tree, like being able to deal 10% more damage to slowed enemies. And then if you pair the sword's critical hit chance increase with the critical precision passive, when you critical hit you gain 20% haste, it makes it great for tracking down enemies trying to escape the fight or move to a nearby party member. The first ability you'll gain in the Defender tree is a short range charge that will knock back any enemies it hits. The second one is a quick shield bash that will stun foes in front of you, and if you have a Carnelian gem equipped in your sword, it will also taunt any enemy you hit for 6 seconds. The final ability in the tree is an 8-second mitigation buff that will reduce damage by 30% on your character, and will also taunt anything within 8 meters if you have a Carnelian gem equipped. This ability does have a 45-second cooldown, which is one of the highest, if not the highest cooldown in the game. The Defender tree obviously focuses on staying alive, by getting a percentage increase to physical armor, increasing how much you can block from melee, ranged, or how much magical damage you can absorb, and an increase to your max health while holding a sword. The Defender tree is almost guaranteed to be needed if you want to tank any dungeons, since it is the only tree in the game that gives you 2 taunt abilities, and also has a passive to make your light attack combo generate more threat. Don't worry too much about the high amounts of threat and taunt in the Defender tree, it can still be somewhat useful in PvP, given that the third swing of your light attack combo will deal 15% more damage, and their elite passive will block and reduce incoming damage to allies within 2 meters of you every 1 second. So you can still manage to be a tank for your group even in PvP format if you have the skill to position yourself correctly. The Rapier is split into the Blood and the Grace category. The Blood category focuses on damage over times, and the Rapier has two abilities available from the get-go in this tree. The first one being Tondo, which swings out a ranged slash from your weapon that will deal a bit of direct damage, but also bleed every target it hits for 12 seconds, dealing 100% of your weapon damage over those 12 seconds. Bleed is the weakest dot in the game compared to Poison and Burn, but the Rapier can make it fairly dangerous. Bleed can stack up to 3 times on a single target, and each stack you build up will refresh the previous application, extending its duration. Since Tondo's bleed lasts for 12 seconds and its cooldown is on 11, if you are quick, you can stack up bleeds on a boss mob over time. It is also coupled with a few different passives to reduce its cooldown, making it easier to stack up these bleeds. The other ability you get out the gate is Flurry. This will be a series of 5 quick hits that deal damage to the target in a row. The unique thing about Flurry is it can be dodge cancelled at any time with either the evade ability in the Rapier or your normal dodge. Flurry can also help you with its passives in dealing damage to people's blocks and breaking through shields, and it also gets a passive to extend the duration of the Rapier's bleed from Tondo by 1 second each hit. The final ability in the Blood tree is Flourish and Finish. This is a quick attack that will knock enemies back, and then if you do a light attack right as it ends, it will lunge forward for a large amount of damage and consume any bleeds currently on the target to deal more damage immediately. Flourish and Finish can be altered to give you grit while you're performing it, which is a mechanic that will help prevent you from being interrupted or staggered. It can also be adjusted to give you stamina when you successfully hit with it, that way you can dodge roll right back out and not expose yourself too much. And it will also come back quicker with each tick of Tondo's bleed to make sure if you bleed a target that Flourish and Finish will be up quickly. It is also the elite in the Blood tree. Its passive will deal 150% of the bleed damage instead of only 110 once you have it maxed out. The Blood tree for the Rapier is named very well, and there is not much outside of this tree beyond dealing with bleed damage. Some of its passives are simple, like 5% more damage to targets that are bleeding, and having your heavy attacks extend the Rapier's bleed by 2 seconds. The Grace tree on the Rapier is much more around evasion. The Rapier excels at getting in and out of combat using the evade ability. It is one of the, if not the quickest cooldown in the game with a 6-second cooldown. The ability says it performs a small, reliable sidestep, but don't be confused, it says it goes in whatever current direction you're moving, so this can be used to go forward or back. It will cancel any current activity, meaning you can interrupt skills with it and provide a momentary invulnerability window. When you use a light attack during evade, it will be performed quickly. The evade skill does not feel very good when you first unlock it, but I will tell you that its passives are some of the most important in the game, and will most likely make the skill much more effective for you. Gaining 20 stamina immediately when you use it will allow you to dodge roll in and out while you're evading. You'll gain movement speed for 3 seconds after use, and maybe the most powerful one is every light attack you land will reduce its cooldown by 30%. This means pretty much 3 light attacks will have the ability up again. The other 2 abilities in the Grace tree are Riposte, which is a very skill-based ability, requiring you to time it out since it only lasts for 1 second, but if you are struck during that 1 second, it will counterattack and stun the enemy briefly. This is also a taunt ability if you have a Carnelian gem equipped, allowing the Rapier to attempt to tank if you are able to survive the fight and evade well enough. And the last ability is Fletch, I believe, a 10-meter lunge forward, stabbing through any mobs in your way. This can be a great escape skill along with a decent attack, and it's got a nice passive, reducing its cooldown by 80% if you get a kill with it, meaning when you're hunting down targets trying to escape the fight, you can make some very quick movement. The Grace tree is built very much around the evade skill, with some of its passives giving you stamina on any hit, or an increase to your speed on any hit that can stack up to 5 times. This will allow you to dash in and out with the evade skill, landing quick hits, and using your dodge roll all the time, in order to be very hard to catch. The final elite passive in the tree is Momentum. You get 25% increased damage on your next light or heavy attack after performing an ability. This buff only lasts 3 seconds, but can be great to mix up with evade, since you will be activating abilities quite a bit. The Hatchet is split up into the Berserker tree and the Throwing tree. The Berserker tree begins with the Berserk ability. This is also a taunt if you have a Carnelian gem equipped, and on activation will taunt everything within 8 meters of you. This triggers a Berserk mode that increases your damage by 20% while it's active. The 15-second cooldown for this ability does not trigger until the Berserk mode is over, which means you can only use it once every 30 seconds, but you only have a downtime of 15 seconds. The 20% damage from Berserk is nice, but it's not all that powerful out the gate. The biggest thing the Berserk gains is from its passives, like 20% movement speed for the entire time it's up, a heal over time every 5 seconds while you're in Berserk, removal of all crowd control effects on your character, and being uninterruptible and immune to stagger while you are in it. Stacking up these passives can make Berserk one of the best abilities in the game. The second ability in the Berserker tree is Feral Rush. The wording on this says it's a sprinting melee attack, however, it is just a charge. It's a short range charge that hits twice on the target and deals decent damage. Much like the sword tree, this one specializes in getting targets that are running away from you, and will immobilize targets that you hit in the back. The third and final ability in the Berserker tree is Raging Torrent. This is a 4-attack combo that will deal decent damage, although I find that the animation takes a little bit too long to get through. And you can gain a 5th and more powerful hit on this when you hit light attack at the end of it if you have the final blow passive. The Hatchet is your typical Berserker setup, focusing on a lot of passives like removing any dots on your character when you hit something while you are below 30% health, or reducing your cooldowns whenever you hit an enemy while your health is below 30%, playing on that death line as they fight. The elite passive in here is Defy Death. When you receive lethal damage, you avoid that death, drop to 50 hit points, and gain immortality for 3 seconds. This has a 75-second cooldown and can be a very good ability if you are able to pop a potion right when it goes off, or you combo it with something that can heal it like the Life Staff and get you back up during that immunity phase, as long as you can avoid being stunned during that time. The throwing tree excels exactly how it's named at throwing your hatchet. The first ability is Rending Throw, that will kind of side throw the hatchet and can be difficult to aim and apply rend to your target. This ability thrives on hitting an enemy that is already affected with the debuff, giving it 20% more damage and a 20% shorter cooldown. The second ability is Social Distancing, that will do a axe throw and dodge backward, dealing decent damage to the target and slowing it for 3 seconds. The third ability is Infected Throw, that will hit the target with a disease and weaken them for 5 seconds, reducing how effective heals are on them by 30% and reducing their overall damage. Its passives can increase the duration of these debuffs, provided the target is below 30% health, and also create a cloud of a disease on impact that will sit there and hit any other enemies in the area with disease as well. The throwing tree gets one of the coolest passives in the game, which is Aimed Throw, and it replaces your block with the hatchet with a aimed throw that deals 95% weapon damage and costs 20 stamina, but does not require any ammunition like the other ranged weapons in the game. The throwing tree also excels at applying and killing things with debuffs, giving you 15% more damage to anything with a debuff on it, or things like its elite passive, which will extend all debuff duration by 30% when you hit any enemy with the throwing axe. The spear is split up into the Zoner tree and the Impaler tree. The Zoner tree excels at crowd control. Its first ability, Javelin, allows you to load up a throwable spear to hit the enemy with and staggering them, and it gets a very important passive to knock them down whenever you do hit them. The second ability is Sweep, which will sweep the legs of the target and knock them down, dealing minor damage, and it will hit anything that your spear hits, not just a single target. Sweep gets a passive that will allow you to do a basic attack during the sweep to follow it up with a powerful downward stab that deals higher damage. The third ability with the spear is Cyclone, which is a 3-meter pushback to all enemies around you and a short slow. Cyclone can get a passive to restore 25 stamina per enemy hit, which will allow you to dive out of the way just after knocking them all back. A really important thing to note with the Zoner tree is they are all very short cooldowns, being 15 seconds, 10 seconds, and 12 seconds, making this a tree that can really keep things on their toes and enemies on the ground when you use it correctly. The Zoner tree is all about dashing in and out of the fight, controlling spacing and opponent's position. When you dodge backwards after hitting an enemy, it costs 20% less stamina. You can restore 20 stamina when you critical hit the enemy, and you gain higher stamina regen when you drop below 50% stamina. All of these bonuses are building towards the elite passive, which is 25% more damage while your stamina is full, allowing you to dash in and out of the fight and knock enemies down, and then deal high damage when your stamina is regenerating while they're on the ground. The Impaler tree for the spear focuses on debuffs and damage output. The first ability is Skewer, which is a short-range charge that will apply bleed to the target for 10 seconds. The second ability is Perforate, which will be 3 quick strikes in a row, dealing minor damage, but each one applies rend, reducing the target's armor for 10 seconds. And the final ability is Volt Kick, which is another short-range charge that will kick your opponent and stun them, interrupting almost all abilities in the game. And if you have a Carnelian Gem equipped in your weapon, then this will taunt the enemy for 2 seconds. Like I said, the Impaler tree is all about debuffs. They get abilities to make it to where the last hit of your light attack chain will slow the enemy when they're lower than 30% health. You have a 15% increased critical chance against targets with bleed, and critical hits will extend the duration of all debuffs your spear applied, or damage over time effects by 20%. These all lead up to the elite passive in the tree, Exploited Weakness, which gives you a 10% damage buff per debuff on the target up to 30% maximum. Meaning just from this tree alone, you could rend them, bleed them, and slow them, and get the maximum of this damage buff, and make quick work of your enemies. The Greataxe is split into the Reaper and the Mauler tree. The Reaper tree is built around killing targets that are at low health and siphoning life from them. The Reap ability is the first one you get, which will extend your axe, pulling enemies to you, dealing a decent amount of damage. If you have a Carnelian Gem equipped, this will taunt the enemies that it hits. You can increase the range of Reap to 8 meters, heal for 30% of the damage done by it, and give it another spin attack at the end of it to deal more damage to your targets. The second ability is a 10-meter charge that deals decent damage, and you cannot be interrupted while using this ability. The final ability in the Reaper tree is Execute, a powerful attack that can deal massive damage to foes under 50% health. You can get Grit on Execute, making it difficult to interrupt you or stagger you, and you can make Execute deal critical damage 100% of the time if they are below 30% health. Execute can be a very powerful ability, however, it is one of the most telegraphed abilities in the game, which can make it hard to land in PvP settings. The critical hit from the Execute can pair Incredible with one of the passive's critical gains. When you make a critical hit with the Greataxe, you heal yourself for 10% of the damage done. You also have a passive to increase your critical hit damage, and heal for 10% of any of the damage you do to enemies below 30% health. Couple the previous passives with Critical and Condition, which gives your Greataxe a 15% higher critical hit chance against enemies below 30% health, and you will see it makes very quick work of enemies that are nearing death. Its final passive, Bloodlust, makes you move 30% faster and deal 15% more damage when you are looking at a foe within 15 meters, making it very difficult for enemies to escape you. The Mauler tree focuses on AoE damage and crowd control. The first ability, Maelstrom, will do a quick spin attack that will pull targets into you and deals moderate damage. You can increase the pull range of Maelstrom along with adding another spin to it, helping you to keep enemies nearby. The second ability, Whirlwind, will deal a minor amount of damage to every enemy around you and can spin up to 4 times if you continue hitting an enemy, and this ability can be fun since you can move while doing it. You can up the spins to 7 total rotations and increase your movement speed while it is on, making it great for packs of mobs. The final ability is Gravity Well, which will create a vortex that pulls enemies to its center for 3 seconds, and then it will end with the Damaging Burst, dealing moderate damage to enemies. The Mauler tree can make it very difficult for enemies to escape you, since you have a passive that makes your heavy attacks pull enemies closer to you, and also gives your heavy attacks Grit, making it difficult to interrupt or stagger you, and making you take 20% less damage while performing them. You also get a Gravity passive that holds enemies still for a short time after you pull them to you, and the entire tree is wrapped up with Mauler's Fury being the elite passive, increasing your damage by 3% for 3 seconds, up to 10 stacks with every Greataxe attack. The Warhammer is split into the Juggernaut and the Crowd Crusher tree. The Juggernaut tree focuses on heavy and hard-hitting attacks that can penetrate through armor. The first ability is Armor Breaker, that penetrates 35% of the target's armor and hits for 140% of your weapon damage. There are passives in this also to apply Rend to the target afterwards, making all of your other attacks hit them quite a bit harder as well. The second ability in the tree is Mighty Gavel, which will swing overhead and leap up, crushing down on enemies and deal mighty damage to them. Mighty Gavel can operate as an execute ability since it can deal more damage to targets under 30% health, and it also excels at breaking through enemies' block by increasing its stamina damage done when using the ability. It also ties directly into the elite passive for the Juggernaut tree, allowing you to hit left click during Mighty Gavel to add a second attack that deals even more damage. The third ability in the tree is Wrecking Ball, which will strike the ground around a target and flatten them to the ground. This ability can gain a passive to help you with large groups of mobs or enemies by flattening everyone within 1.5 meters of your target. Like I said before, the Juggernaut tree excels at destroying targets with heavy armor. You get a 10% armor penetration for all Warhammer standard attacks, and you can also apply Exhaust with every ability you do with the Warhammer, making the target regenerate stamina at a slower rate so they can't block quite as often. The Crowd Crusher tree is the crowd control tree, excelling at keeping groups of mobs or enemies all under control. The first ability is Clear Out, that will swing your hammer and knock enemies back 4 meters. Clear Out is one of the only abilities that can affect group members and give them Fortify for 10% defense for 4 seconds when they're within 6 meters of you as you use it. The second ability is Shockwave, where you will slam your hammer into the ground and apply stun to all enemies nearby you for 2 seconds. If you have a Carnelian gem equipped in your Warhammer, this will also taunt any mobs hit for 6 seconds. This can be a very effective crowd control, especially when you get Meteoric Crater, allowing you to extend the effective range of Shockwave up to 4 meters. The final ability in the Crowd Crusher tree is Path of Destiny, a powerful ground strike that erupts a wave of energy, dealing damage to everything in the path. This is the only ability that does not crowd control out the gate, however it does have a passive to make it stagger all enemies in its path, helping you still keep enemies under check. The Crowd Crusher tree tries to capitalize on these crowd control abilities by regaining 35% of the damage dealt as health whenever you use any of the Crowd Crusher abilities, along with the fact that whenever a target is affected by any of your crowd control effects, they are slowed by 20% for 4 seconds, making it difficult for them to get out of the area when you're swinging your next ability. The bow is split up into the Skirmisher and the Hunter trees. The left side is the Skirmisher tree that focuses on quick mobility and close quarters combat. The first ability is Evade Shot that will leap up in the air and backwards, shooting an enemy in front of you. The passives for this allow you to knock the enemy back as well 2 meters, and to gain haste after using it so you can create more distance. The second ability is Rain of Arrows that will do a 7-meter barrage down, dealing moderate damage. This is a single direct hit and not a volley type attack you see in a lot of other games with a bow. You can also enhance Rain of Arrows to bleed the target over time for 12 seconds and to slow them for a short duration. Poison Shot is the third ability, firing a poison arrow and creating a cloud for 6 seconds that is 3 meters wide. Poison is a pretty good debuff and will last 20 seconds. The Skirmisher tree is all about getting away from enemies and creating distance in tight spaces. When you're surrounded by 3 enemies near you, you gain a haste buff, helping you escape. Dodging will increase your damage by 20% for 5 seconds. You can also gain a passive to allow dodge to give you a short duration haste buff. And these all synergize well with the elite passive in here, Knee Shot, making your leg shots slow the enemy as well. The Hunter tree focuses on high damage output and range. The first ability is Penetrating Shot, that will fire straight through any enemies within 100 meters, dealing 150% weapon damage. You can increase this to deal more damage for each enemy hit, and to deal more damage to enemies that are 20 meters or more away. It's very important to note that Penetrating Shot is used as an AoE ability, because 150% weapon damage is actually weaker than the heavy attack for the bow itself, which is 170% weapon damage. So this is actually less effective to use when you're fighting one target than just charging a heavy shot. The second ability is Splinter Shot that will fire an arrow out and then split after 10 meters into 3 separate arrows, dealing 50% weapon damage. You can increase this to 5 arrows and also reduce cooldown for each enemy you hit. Splinter Shot can be difficult to use, especially in close quarters PvP or PvE, since I was not able to get the ability to deal any damage within that 10 meters, and it would only hit targets after it's split into multiple arrows. The final ability is Rapid Shot, where you fire 3 consecutive arrows, dealing a total of 325% of your weapon damage. Rapid Shot can come back 50% faster if all 3 arrows hit the same target, and you can increase the final shot's damage by 25%. Rapid Shot does lock you in place while you're firing it, so it can be difficult to get it off, and it can sometimes be difficult to get all 3 shots to land on your targets, and might require some skill. The Hunter tree excels at long-range combat, giving you a passive that deals 20% more damage to anything 10 meters or more away from you, allowing your heavy attacks to fly faster and deal more damage, increasing the range your arrows go before gravity starts to kick in, and increasing your overall critical hit chance. The elite passive for the Hunter tree is Concussion, giving you a 20% increase to your headshot damage, and a 50% chance to get your arrow back when landing a headshot. The Musket trees are Sharpshooter and Trapper. The Sharpshooter tree excels at long-range combat and single target damage. The first ability is Power Shot, which will load your musket up with a shot that deals 150% weapon damage. Overall, the passives for Power Shot are kind of weak, but you can reduce its cooldown on headshots by 15%. The second ability is Powder Burn, which will load up a musket shot that will burn the enemy, dealing a good amount of damage over 9 seconds. Powder Burn can also make your standard musket shots deal more damage while they are on fire, and headshots will result in a longer burn duration. The final ability in the Sharpshooter tree is Shooter Stance. This ability will drop you to your knee, prevent you from moving, but will reduce your reload time by 75%, making you be able to fire off consecutive shots quickly. These shots fired while in Shooter Stance only deal 100% of your weapon damage and don't give you any increase. You can get passives to increase it to 5 shots in a row, and also reduce the cooldown of all of your musket abilities when you hit something with 3 consecutive shots. The Sharpshooter tree rewards you for being aimed down your sights for longer periods, giving you a 5% increase to your damage when you do it for more than 3 seconds, or a stackable 2.5% damage increase on every hit while you're aimed down your sights. It also has headshot and critical damage increases when the enemy is far away from you, and cooldown reductions on headshots, rewarding those who take their time and line up their shots correctly. The elite passive in the Sharpshooter tree is Sniper, which will give you a 3x zoom on all of your aimed shots, and another increase to headshot damage for 15%. The Trapper tree is the one that you could say focuses more on close quarters combat, but the musket will always struggle in this area. The first ability is a trap that you can throw down at your feet in front of you that will last for 20 seconds. When it is triggered, it will root the target for 3 seconds. You can upgrade the trap to allow you to regenerate 100% of the weapon damage you deal as health when you hit a trap target, and to have 2 traps active at the same time. The second ability is Stopping Power, which will be a loaded shot that will knock the enemy back and stagger them. Stopping Power can be very helpful when you unlock the supplementary Repulsion, which will make it slow the target for 8 seconds. The third ability is a Sticky Bomb, a throwable item that will attach to targets and deal massive damage after 3 seconds to all enemies in the area. Although this ability says it is short range, it can actually be thrown at very long ranges if you get the art correct. The Trapper tree has some great passives to help you with close range combat as much as you can with the musket, giving you a faster walking and strafe movement speed while someone is within 8 meters of you, giving you a slight haste buff after you dodge, and giving you an instant reload once every 6 seconds when you dodge. The elite passive for the Trapper tree is Lethal Combo, increasing your damage by 20% against any targets affected by a Trapper tree status effect. The Sticky Bomb and the Trap itself only last 3 seconds, so it does not pair amazing with those, but Stopping Power's slow effect is 8 seconds, so it can be pretty effective if you take that. The Fire Staff is split into the Fire Mage and the Pyromancer trees. The Fire Mage specializes in longer range combat, giving you Pillar of Fire, which is a ground target spell that deals moderate damage but has a quick recast. The second ability is Meteor Shower, which requires you to stand still and channel it, dealing AoE damage throughout the area every second. You can get Meteor Shower to have grit while you are casting it, helping you not be interrupted or staggered, but this is still an ability that's mainly useful when you are in a group, or at least wearing decent armor. Fireball is an ability that will deal moderate damage to the target and leave a burning field around them for 6 seconds, applying burn to enemies. You can really stack up some damage with the Fire Mage tree by giving your abilities a 15% higher critical hit chance, and also giving yourself a 20% higher critical hit chance while holding a Fire Staff. This tree also has a very important passive called Flare, which makes your heavy attacks no longer consume mana. The elite passive for the Fire Mage is the Runes of Helios, placing a 2-meter rune on the ground, increasing your spell damage for 30% while you are standing in it, and the rune will last for 7 seconds. It does have a cooldown of 30 seconds, so I'm not sure how effective this will really be. The Pyromancer tree deals much more in close range combat compared to the Fire Mage. The first ability is Flamethrower that will spray from your staff, hitting enemies in front of you, applying burn to them. This can be channeled until you are out of mana and will cost 5 mana per second. You can increase the range of Flamethrower, the damage of it, and also give it no cooldown, making it a fairly unique ability. The second ability is Incinerate, which will hit a fiery explosion around your character, pushing everything back 3 meters and applying burn to them. Incinerate can be altered to make it restore 20% of its damage as health to you, and give it a second blast. The third ability in the Pyromancer tree is Burnout, which will have a short charge up, followed by a dash that will pass through enemies, applying burn to anyone that you go through. Burnout has a very good passive that will allow it to go 50% further, allowing you to hit more targets or get more distance between you and your enemy. There are a few passives in the Pyromancer tree that help you to burn targets for longer periods, and to allow your light attacks to catch the enemy on fire as well. But the majority of the passives actually deal with self-survivability, making it where you burn the enemy, you gain a short mitigation buff, or when you are struck, you create a field of fire burning enemies near you. The final passive in the Pyromancer tree is Reheat. 6 seconds without casting a Fire Staff ability increases your mana regen by 400%. I have heard that this does not work whenever you switch off the Fire Staff to a different weapon. I am not sure if this is a glitch or design, but it means that if you take this passive, you cannot save up any of your abilities if you want to capitalize on the mana regen, and you need to get them all used as quick as possible, and utilize your light and heavy attacks more often. The Life Staff is split into the Healing and the Protector tree. The Healing tree starts out with Divine Embrace, a straight up heal to one ally for 150% of your weapon damage on a very short cooldown of 6 seconds. The passives for Divine Embrace will allow it to split to another target within 8 meters if you hit someone below 50% health, and if that target is below 50% health, it will move on to a third ally within 8 meters as well. Their second ability is Sacred Ground that will create an area on the ground for 15 seconds, healing 20% of your weapon damage every second. You can also augment Sacred Ground to regenerate stamina and mana at a faster rate while you are in it, and increase the healing allies receive while standing in it from every other source. The last ability is Splash of Light, a heal that reaches up to 100 meters and heals all group members for a low amount. The Life Staffs get a passive that is incredibly important, making your light and heavy attacks no longer cost any mana, and also has some unique things like allowing your light attacks to heal for a very low amount when they pass through allies. They get another passive called Sacred Protection, which will increase the health of all allies in your group by 10% while you are holding a Life Staff. The final passive in the Healing tree is whenever you heal an enemy that's below 50% health, you heal them for 30% more, giving you a really good elite passive. Don't be deceived by the Protector tree in the Life Staff, however, it does also do quite a bit of healing. The first one is Orb of Protection that will shoot out a projectile and give an ally you hit with it a damage mitigation buff for 20 seconds. It will also do a very minor heal to that ally, or it can deal damage to an enemy if you choose to use it as an attack. Orb of Protection can be altered to give a regeneration to it, healing 7.5% of your weapon damage every second, and its final passive will apply its effect to all allies within 3 meters on impact. The second ability is Beacon, that will shoot a projectile to an enemy and create a pool of healing around them that will follow them around, healing for 20% of your weapon damage every second. Beacon's passes will increase the radius by 50% and increase the duration by 5 seconds. The final ability in the Protector tree is a straight targeted heal for 100% of your weapon damage. This is on an incredibly short cooldown of 4 seconds and will heal 30% more on the target for each buff you have on them, making it very important to stack up multiple of these abilities on the target before healing them. The elite passive for the Protector tree comes off of Light's Embrace and synergizes with the entire tree very well, making it when you heal with the ability, it extends all buffs on the target from your life staff by 2 seconds. The Protector tree also has the ability to make your heavy and light attacks give damage mitigation to yourself when you hit an enemy, increase your buff duration by 20%, and give a natural mana regen to you and your group. The final weapon in New World is the Ice Gauntlet, split into the Ice Tempest and the Builder tree. The Ice Tempest tree is built around slowing and crowd controlling targets. The first ability is Ice Spikes, that will have your character fire out spikes in front of them, dealing minor damage, and at the end of the spikes will deal massive damage with a larger spike hitting your target and pushing them back. You can use your left mouse button to pull out the mighty spike at any point in the line you want. Ice Spikes also gets the passive to make it to where the final spike will hit a wider area and deal AoE damage around it. The second ability in the tree is Ice Storm, summoning an area that will deal very minor damage every 0.25 seconds and slow enemies within a 5-meter radius. The final ability is a Wind Chill, which will be a channeled, aimable ability that will blast things with freezing winds and push them back away from your character. The Ice Tempest tree really excels at having enemies within your AoEs, giving you Critical Frost, which is a higher critical hit chance when something is in a frosted area or afflicted with frostbite, and the incredible passive Heavy Freeze, which will make your heavy attacks freeze the target in place if you hit them while they are in the Ice Storm or they are afflicted with frostbite. The final passive in Ice Tempest tree is Ultimate Chill, which will make your ice abilities chill targets and increase the amount of ice damage they take for 3 seconds. The Builder tree for the Ice Gauntlet is more focused around staying alive. The first ability is Ice Pylon, which will plant a turret that will fire projectiles at enemies around you. You have quite a few passives to increase how long the ice turret will stay alive, and the final passive in the Builder tree is tied to the Ice Pylon, doubling its health and extending its frost radius to 5 meters, allowing you to take advantage of a few passives in the tree. Those two passives are Quick Frost, which will increase your speed when you are within that frosted area, and Empowered Frost, which will regain mana for each spell you cast while inside that frosted area. The second ability in the Builder tree is Ice Shower, which will summon a small line in front of you and will frostbite any enemies that enter it, rooting them for 1 second and blocking sprint and dodge. You can also augment Ice Shower to rend targets, weakening their armor, and giving you or any allies that pass through it a speed boost for a short time. The final ability is Entomb, where you will encase yourself in ice, becoming invulnerable for up to 10 seconds and getting greatly increased mana regen. You can cancel Entomb at any moment by hitting your right mouse button, or you can spend 20 mana with the left mouse button and break it, knocking everyone back. Entomb can be incredibly helpful when you are on the losing end of a fight by cleansing all debuffs on you when you activate it. The Builder tree also has a couple passives that help you stay alive a little bit better by converting mana to stamina when you block an attack here, allowing you to dodge roll more often, or giving you a short damage mitigation buff every time you cast an ice ability. Alright guys, that was an overview of all the weapons that were available in the New World closed beta. Hopefully this helped anyone who's interested in playing the game but was not able to get into the beta, and gave you a decent understanding of what the weapons excel at and which ones you are interested in mixing and matching. Let me know down in the comments what you're planning to mix and match, and how you're planning to utilize these different weapons. And I will post in the description what each weapon scales off in terms of attributes if you missed it while we were going over each weapon. Thanks for watching, I will see you next time.